Hello biology, this is Mr. B here again, and we are continuing on with our lessons today on Chapter 1, Section 3, Studying Life. So we looked at last time all the characteristics of life that we're supposed to study. So today we're going to kind of take a more specific look at kind of the different levels that life exists. So we're going to start with our smallest type of life that we can look at compared to the largest type of life that we can look at. So our list here, it starts out, maybe don't get all these down because we're going to go all of them more in detail. We have molecules, cells, organisms, populations of a single kind of organisms, communities of different organisms in an area, and the biosphere. So all of these are the levels of life, with the top molecules being the smallest and the bottom biosphere being the largest. So first off, the level of life is molecules, and these are just groups of atoms, and these are the smallest unit of most chemical compounds. So technically, molecules are not alive in a sense, but without them, they're like the building blocks that make us alive. So by themselves, they're not alive, but when they come together, they're what makes us go. So molecules is the first one. So then we have cells. So this is what we mentioned this last time. One of the requirements of life is being made up of cells, and this is the smallest functional unit of life. So what that means is the smallest that anything can ever be and be considered alive is one cell. There are organisms out there that are only one cell, so we have to at least have a cell to be considered to be alive. The next level is groups of cells. So this groups of cells can be either a tissue, an organ, or an organ system. So a group of cells make up a tissue, a group of tissues makes up an organ, so a group of heart tissues will make up a heart, and then a group of organs is what makes up an organ system. So if you have your heart and all your blood and your vessels, that's going to be part of the circulatory system. So those are all, again, can be classified maybe as different cells. The example they give you down there in the picture is nervous tissue makes up brain, which makes up the nervous system. So moving on, next is an actual organism. So one individual living thing. So that's one level that we can study at. We can just look at one single organism. So for example here, our one organism would be a bison. So if we wanted to be a biologist that only studied organisms, we would only look at one single thing at a time, so we'd want to look at a bison. However, there's other levels. One other level is looking at populations. So this would be the group of organisms in that of one type that live in the same area. So if we were a population biologist, we would look at a whole herd of bison because we want to see how the whole herd just interacts. And again, we would only focus on the bison if we were looking at a population. So an organism is an individual thing, and a population is multiple of the same thing. So if we want to go one step further and raise this up, we'd be looking at a community. So if we were a community biologist, we'd look at populations that live together in a defined area. So we wouldn't just look at that herd of bison, we would look at as well as how the hawk, how the snake, how the prairie dogs, and even the grass, because the grass is alive. We would look at how all those things interact together. So again, this is just getting more and more complex as we're going. We're looking at more factors. We're not just focusing on the bison. We're focusing on all the things in that certain area that are alive, living together. So that would be what a community biologist is. So the next step up would be looking at an ecosystem. And this is a community, again, all the groups of living things, as well as its non-living surroundings. So this, an ecosystem is going to be, again, all those things we had earlier: a hawk, a snake, a bison, prairie dogs, grass, and then we're going to add in the things that are not alive, as in like the stream, water is not alive, rocks are not alive, and air. And air technically can be considered alive because it has all those little microorganisms floating around it, but when we think of the actual air we breathe, it is not alive in itself. So if we study ecosystems, we're going to take a look at everything. And then the largest level of life that we could study would just be the biosphere, and this is the part of Earth that contains all of our ecosystems. So basically, the entire portion of the Earth that is capable of sustaining life is considered the biosphere. So if you were a biologist that studied the biosphere, there wouldn't be a single thing that you did not study. So those are all the levels of life. Again, getting larger, or we started with the small and worked our way to the large. So let's go backwards here. We'll go biosphere is the largest. Within the biosphere, there's ecosystems. Then within ecosystem, there's communities. Within communities, we have single population. Within the single population, we have an organism. Within each organism, we'll have groups of cells, maybe tissues, organs, and organ systems. Within each group of cells, we have cells, and then within cells, we have molecules. So that is how that breakdown goes right there. So wrapping up this section, we're just going to talk about how biology affects our life, because again, we are all biologists now, and it's going to be things that we're going to need to know. So more than any other area of study, biology plays a part in your life every day. Whether you know it or not, biology is present in your life all the time. So what it does for us, it provides information about the food and the methods for sustaining the world's food supplies. So again, like things like food spoilages and things like that, that all describes biology. And then biology describes the conditions of good health and the behaviors and diseases that can harm you. This is a huge thing. If we were alive maybe 100 years ago, there'd be diseases that we know that we cure pretty normally that would almost wipe you out. You wouldn't have a chance of surviving. So biology has helped us out a lot in that area. It's used to diagnose and treat medical problems, kind of the same thing, and identifies environmental factors that might threaten us. So that is, again, may not affect you right now, but it might affect your children or your children's children if we're not careful. And then biology helps you understand what affects the quality of your life, again, maybe the environment. And biology provides decision makers with useful information and analytical skills needed to predict and affect the future of our planet. So again, biology is going to help us keep our planet the way it is, and hopefully it'll stay the same for our children. So that's it for this section. Let me know if you have any questions.